What's up, everybody? It's the Benchwarmers, and we're here for our first edition of the 2021 NBA mock draft. We're only going to be doing the lottery teams today, and it's especially surprising for me. I'm a Warriors fan, and Rohan's also a Warriors fan. Andy will not be picking for his Knicks, but we will each be picking each third pick in the lottery. So we'll be rotating around, explaining our pick. Hopefully you enjoy. We'll have many updates to this before the actual draft next month. But with that being said, let's get started. First overall pick, the Pistons.
So at first we have the Pistons, as Aki just said, and this pick is very obvious. It has to be Cade Cunningham. This is the consensus #1 pick on many draft boards and many mock drafts. And you may be a little bit surprised because the Pistons also have Killian Hayes, who they just drafted in the lottery last year, but he didn't play too well last year, and Cade Cunningham is also the best prospect, so it still makes the most sense.
With the second pick, the Rockets will be taking center Evan Mobley. Now, Evan Mobley is a really versatile player. He played USC. He was really good even throughout the tournament. USC had a little bit of a run, and that was sort of led by the Mobley brothers. And I think Evan Mobley is a really solid player. He has an NBA ready body, an NBA ready mind. He's played in some really crazy teams. When he was in high school, he was really good. I think he just has the versatility that's really good for the modern game, and I think the Rockets could really use that alongside Christian Wood or even instead of him.
Next up, we have the Cavaliers at 3. I think this is probably the first pick that isn't super obvious, but I think they should just go best player available, and it's between the two Jalens, Jalen Suggs or Jalen Green. In my opinion, I just think Jalen Green, he's a bit taller and he's a bit of a better shooter, so he just makes more sense to me for this pick.
At 4th, we have the Raptors taking the other Jalen Suggs. And I think this is one pick that we made because we thought that he was one of the best prospects available. And the Raptors should not be picking at #4, considering how good their team was. I think their record was just not as good as it should have been. So I think having a player like Jalen Suggs, who's already played for a championship level Gonzaga team, and he's also just a really good player overall, I think will definitely contribute to the Toronto Raptors' success next year. And Kyle Lowry is aging, and he also might leave in the near future. And I think Fred VanVleet will definitely be able to take Jalen Suggs under his wing and develop him into a very good shooting guard.
Now go on to the 5th pick. This is where there's a lot more confusion. There's a lot of players who have been rising, and the previous consensus last of the top 5, Jonathan Kuminga, is sort of falling a little bit, and there's questions about whether he should be in 5th. And this might be an unpopular take, but I don't really like Jonathan Kuminga's style. I don't think he is a very efficient player. I don't think he'll succeed on a winning team in the future. And if that's what the Magic want, then I don't think Jonathan Kuminga will be that player. He might put up some sneaky good stats initially, but he won't develop into a really good player is what my gut feeling is. So with that said, I think the Magic should take James Bouknight out of UConn, and I think that he's a heavy riser. He's a much more efficient player. Shoots around 45% from the field. Has a good offensive defensive game. Can improve his shot a little bit, but he definitely led UConn to one of its most successful seasons, which placed him as a 7th seed, which is one of the higher seeds which they've been in a little while in the NCAA tournament. And I think the leadership which he provides, the experience being that #1 guy, and I think he's been surrounded by the right sort of people, and the coaching staff at UConn's also really helped his development even further. Out of high school, he wasn't that highly ranked at all, but now he's being talked as a top 5 pick. So I think definitely his trend is up, and I think the Magic should take him here.
All right, next we have the Thunder picking at 6, and I think they have decent guard depth already with Kemba Walker, SGA, and Lou Dort. Lou Dort could also play small forward, but I think they really should go with a forward or big man here. And I'm actually going to go with Jonathan Kuminga. Obviously, there were some concerns that Aki mentioned already, but the Thunder, they're not really in win now mode, and they have so many draft picks this year and in future years. So that I think they can afford to take a risk on someone like Kuminga.
At 7, we have our Warriors. This pick actually was taken from the Timberwolves in a trade that was done earlier in the past season, and we have him taking Davion Mitchell, and we think this is a really good pick for the Warriors. It's also a great fit into their system. He's a really solid defender, and I think that's really going to help the Warriors, especially at the point guard position. He's also a really good shooter. He shot around 45% from the three-point line last season, which is really impressive. I guess one concern may be his free throw shooting, but I think he improved a lot on his three-point shooting. So I think he can also improve his free throw shot. So I think Warriors probably need a point guard because their backup point guard situation is not too good. With Stephen Curry off the floor, they seem to be struggling. I think Nico Mannion isn't a bad player, but he doesn't seem like he has the confidence to take as many shots like he should, sort of like Ben Simmons. So I think having another point guard would help in that respect.
Also, he played for Baylor, who won the national championship. So, I mean, it's a winning culture. With that said, we're going to the 8th pick, and this is the match again. And this time, I think they will be in development for a few years because their team, they basically wiped their entire team clean. They gave away all their good players except for Terrence Ross for some reason. He's just sad there, I guess. But I think this is where they take a developmental player. And I think because they have Cole Anthony and in this mock draft, James Bouknight, I think that they go for a big to complement people like Wendell Carter. So I think they go for the first slight reach of this draft, Kai Jones. Now, the reason why I'm taking Kai Jones is because he is sort of like a Evan Mobley, but worse, if you know what I'm saying. He is a big, he has a lot of versatility. He's really quick. He plays like a Bam Adebayo in a way. He's very good defensively, but he has only played limited minutes and doesn't have the best counting stats when he was in college. But if you look at his game, he is among that lineage of bigs in Texas who've developed, been really strong, really versatile, and they have developed into really good players. I mean, I think over the past few years, you've seen quite a few of these Texas bigs come into the league. Some of them have succeeded. You've even seen players like Kevin Durant early on, but then a couple of the more recent ones like Mo Bamba are like good, but they haven't gotten opportunities or something. So players like Mo Bamba, players like Jackson Hayes are there. And I think that Kai Jones is the next one to be added to that list. And I think he might be decent, he might not, but I think it's worth the risk.
Next up, we have the Kings, and they have a decent roster already, good guard depth with Fox, Halliburton, and Hield. And then they also have some decent big men with Rashawn Holmes and even Marvin Bagley. So I really think they need to go with here is a wing because I'm not really sure if Harrison Barnes is in their long-term plans. And there's two options in my opinion, and those are Scotty Barnes and Franz Wagner. I think they're somewhat similar players, both kind of defensive minded, but I'm going to go with Wagner here. I think he's a better playmaker, and he also has just general better upside on the offensive side of the ball.
At 10th, we have the Pelicans taking Keon Johnson. I think the Pelicans can go with a lot of picks, a lot of positions here. They could go for a forward to maybe replace Steven Adams or Jackson Hayes because they aren't doing too well in the paint. Or they could go for a replacement for Zion and Brandon Ingram. But I think what I have them taking is more of a shooting guard, point guard type approach because Lonzo Ball's his departure may occur, and I don't know if he's a long-term piece for the Pelicans. And also Eric Bledsoe is definitely not a long-term piece. I think the Pelicans are just trying to trade him away as soon as possible. So it's good to invest in a young shooting guard. And I think Keon Johnson is a really great pick because he is one of the most athletic players in this draft. I think he actually set the record for the best vertical in NBA combine history at like 48 inches. So you can already tell he's a really explosive athlete. And on top of that, he's a really good defender. But one concern may be his offensive capabilities. He's still a little bit raw, but he's averaging like 12 points per game on 25 minutes, which is decent. But I think his defense really makes up for that, and he can develop into an offensive player in the NBA.
Go to the 11th pick, and you have the Hornets. And I think the major issue with the player who's falling so far, Scotty Barnes, is that he never stepped up when it came to game time. When he was in the in the round of 32 in the Sweet 16, he played terribly in those games, and I think that was because he wasn't ready for the moment. But in this circumstance, you have a clear leader in LaMelo Ball. You have a good, plentiful guards and experience on the team with Miles Bridges, Terry Rozier, Devontae Graham. I mean, I think there's an opportunity maybe to reach for a center like Sengun from Turkey here, but I think that at this point you're just taking a risk on any player, and I think if you want to take a risk on a guy who you know is at least going to be somewhat decent in Scotty Barnes.
Now we have the 12th pick by the San Antonio Spurs. They have a lot of issues with this team. Honestly, DeMar DeRozan is a free agent, and I'm not sure if he's going to be sticking around. So they can really go with kind of any position here, except for probably point guard, but they do already have DeJounte Murray. I think just the best player available for them right now is Jalen Johnson, who can play really either small forward or power forward. He did have some struggles in college. I know he was actually originally supposed to be like a top 3 or top 5 pick, but he's fallen down a bit because of his issues at Duke. But he still has incredible athleticism and a ton of upside. So it makes a lot of sense for this rebuilding Spurs team.
At 13th, we had the Pacers taking Josh Giddey. Josh Giddey is actually a really unique player. He's very similar to LaMelo Ball, I feel like, in terms of like overall skills and his physical attributes, and they actually both played in the Australian Basketball League. Josh Giddey's 6'8", and he's less than 200 pounds, but he's a really solid passer and offensive player. But I guess one concern would be his defensive capabilities. I think he's good at stealing the ball, but he's not good at like staying on top of the defenders. But I think he can develop into a better defender later on. I think the Pacers don't really have any major positional needs right now. They have a good point guard in Malcolm Brogdon. Their shooting guard in Karis LeVert is also good. They have decent small forwards. They have T.J. Warren. They also have a really solid power forward in Domantas Sabonis, who is an all-star, and they have Miles Turner at center. So they don't have too many positional needs, but I guess McConnell may be leaving. I guess he's a free agent, so I guess you could look for a backup to that. And I think Giddey could, he has the size to play that position, and he has the potential to become a wing defender. But I think also just having a playmaker off the bench would be solid.
Now to the final pick of the lottery, the Warriors' own pick at number 14. I have them taking Corey Kispert from Gonzaga. Corey Kispert fits really well into the Warriors system. They can put him at the 3 if they decide to trade Wiggins and in a package in some offseason. I mean, a package with Wiggins might even include this pick, so they may not even be picking here. But with that said, with the current draft, I think taking a guy like Corey Kispert, who's a really good sharpshooter, isn't the best at defense, but the Warriors themselves were a pretty good defensive team last year, and adding a guy like Davion Mitchell in this draft would improve their defense more, so they could, like, I guess, give up a little bit of defense with taking Corey Kispert here. Having more shooters surrounding Steph Curry puts a little bit less tension on him, fewer double teams, fewer triple teams, and allows him to function more in a winning sort of culture, which the Warriors want to be. So if you have a lineup where you have Steph, Clay, and Kispert, they're all lethal shooters from 3. So having guys like Draymond and James Wiseman isn't too big of a hassle on them. So I think Corey Kispert will round out the lottery. But with that said, that is the end of our mock draft 2021 1.0. We will be having several more mock drafts for the draft day itself. And on draft day, we'll be having our reaction to at least a couple picks, and not the entire lottery. So stay tuned for that. But with that said, this is the Benchwarmers, and we're signing out. See ya.